And as I'm starting, the lot of fortune is right on the 22 degree of Gemini, which is exactly the sun of the chart that I'm going to discuss with the Trump chart. A very relevant chart. I know I have been doing it a lot for quite a while, and I was stricken by certain things that I saw in regard to the eclipse. So Donald Trump is an eclipse boy. I'm going to talk about the allegations. I'm going to talk about the cult, and let's just get ourselves into location. So the moon has just left Rahu. You saw the video I recorded yesterday, and I kept it that way. I kept it messy. I kept it not organized. I just recorded and shot. And so I woke up with, hey, a colleague mentioned Donald Trump, and I didn't watch the video yet, so you can watch Dan Waite's video on Donald Trump, pinpointing. And I did mention that both the midheaven of Trump and the midheaven of the Taliban is conjuncting Algol, and we're going to see events. Okay, I know that Trump has given a lot of statements regarding the Taliban regime, and there's a similar midheaven there. So the moon was just conjuncting Rahu, giving us fated events, and of course Trump is an eclipse child, so is guys don't kill each other. I love both of you. Thank you. Okay. Kittens begin to climb things that they weren't able to climb before. So this is a Saturn day, which I also give reverence to Uranus. I'm going to call on Dana Balgedi for the fixed star of the day to guide us through explaining to the masses opinions that are very intricate. Okay, usually with mass media you have to give a simple message because that's what makes you money. But I'm going to attempt at explaining something a bit more intricate and understanding it myself, and delivering the message in a way that is entertaining and in the way that is making people eager to listen. And this is a Venus hour, Venus in Cancer in the 11th house, okay, 11-11 as I speak. So let's have positive thinking for positive changes on the very deep and dark and electric matters that are to be discussed in this episode. Mercury applying to Procyon, so it's also appropriate to call on Procyon to sweetening the message, okay, to sweeten conflict around what I have to say, because of course it triggers a lot of things you didn't know. I don't know if whether you vote for Trump or not vote for Trump. Maybe you dislike Trump, but you don't even dislike him for what I'm about to say. And so the help of Procyon to denucleify, and I said the denucleification is to do also with abolishing expandable children. Uranus, of course, on Algol. Okay. Algol, I believe, is not minima. Let's just quickly check for Algol if it is minima or not. It's going to be very relevant for our talk. So I also suggest you, if you talk about Donald Trump, about the Taliban, about anything Uranus Algol, please, you check Algol minima, because when she's eclipsing, there's going to be more of a fated element. Okay, one of the things that I did during eclipse of Algol, before I knew about Geert Wilders and Lars, but it's even before that is Geert Wilders, because he's been through what Lars has been through, and then was perpetrator. I believe Lars, okay. Then I think that day it was when Wilders posted a video of somebody torturing pigs with electric shock, and I was like, oh, when will we deport all the judges from Brussels and so on that that torture children this way? And so I'm asking for a Hans, which was the whistleblower on the Mink case. Yes, and I wrote another person. It's like, yeah, we need to tend to that. There's also, yes, to do with juristics. And that was very fated. Okay, something came out of me. in that day. It's good to know that Algol was minima, okay, was eclipsing, was fated for me to understand it. And then I found out about Lars, which was, yes, through David Icke. I was like, what do you want from the guy? He's been locked up for 20 years. And I went into the page and saw the testimonial of Free Mama from the Mafia. She talks about the robber bank, and she gives a voice to Lars to talk about the torture and abuse and satanic ritual abuse that he's been through, both by Rute and by Wilders and so on. And I believe him. So we do have Algol minima, but it's not right now. We are today. We will have in the evening a minima Algol. So right now Algol is basically on her decreasing phase, where we are purging, and it's not okay. It's probably less malefic in this way. Now we go back and we go to Donald Trump's natal chart. Okay, when Algol is minima, it means the eclipse. So yes, this is an AA-rated natal chart. Okay, so unlike Wilders, where I was genuinely afraid to ask the ascendant because I'm afraid it's a 22 something. Then I'm gonna have to delineate that, and then of course I will be watching that. So, so I'd rather not. But that's why I didn't ask for the ascendant. The sun for Trump, yes, 22 degrees. It means I'm going to connect this with the cult. 22 degrees, I said the degree of to kill and be killed, according to Nikola Stoyanovich. Very likely assassinated Nikola Stoyanovich. If he died from COVID suddenly, we understand that. Yes, and he had the 18th degree in his chart. That I know from a student. Sun 22, it doesn't only mean a person could be assassinated, but he is in a to kill or be killed situations in his life. Okay, Beyonce has 3 of those, with I think also Neptune, and she is married to Jay-Z, who has been allegedly murdering a lot of people, and perhaps she had to be in situations where either she would be dead or she would kill. So for Donald Trump, again, we have this degree. If we bring back for the disclaimer of this conversation, and the disclaimer of this conversation is that because those people that we see as authority figures, even if democratic, whatnot, they are bred to or kidnapped as young children to or sold as young children, and according to their bloodlines, they go, this person will be entertainer, this person child spy, this person leader, and so on. Left to right, all of them. Okay, so I don't want us pinpointing people because we don't like what they say, which is basically a role that they are supposed to play, and saying, oh, this person, they're right wing, I don't like them. Oh, look, they were pedophile, they were this, they were that. No, all of them had to be tortured. They went through torture, and all of them had to commit torture. All of them. Also the survivors that we hear were speaking, okay? And I want you to look at Anneke Lucas. She was child killer, and she was child spy, and also she was raped and tortured. Okay? So let's have this little reality check that we aligned this, and we understand that at 22 degrees, Sun 22, I want to also testify, I have Mars retrograde at 22. And as child, yes, there were attempts to kidnap me. Okay, and because an attempt maybe to find out of what my bloodline is, and to see for what would I fit in that array is not coming from my parents. My parents not, yes, but children are targeted. Okay, And also things I understand I saw as child is not necessarily from past life, but I saw as child things that happened in Belgium, things that happened to people, things that reminded me of Inquisition. And I didn't know where this is coming from, because I know today that certain individuals, okay, are going through certain psychic attack. I can say that this psychic information could have been just children being psychic, but could also have been attempts to infiltrate my psyche. So from a young age, I will not have access to grow and develop healthily sexually, even though in the physical, okay, it was not like, God forbid, one of my parents doing me something, or so on and so forth. And so, yes, I have Mars 22 in the 9th house, mind you, in retrograde. Yes, when I was abroad traveling and needed housing, okay, was when I met, was introduced to basically a person that was doing solving cold cases and also had Sun 22 was conjoining my Mars, and that was remedial because through mediumship I received for what to do to save myself, but also to understand deeper the structure. He didn't go as far as the Expandable Children project, but I immediately, the first day I was in Amsterdam, homeless, immediately I said, who are the homeless? The locals. If I take not just the refugees, before the war with Ukraine, then who are the people who are homeless? It's children. Okay, it's people, but it's also children because they ran away, and immediately that was in my mind. Now back to Trump. Sun 22 is given a person that could be inbred or kidnapped or replaced at birth. And I want to thank all the people that tend to be replaced at birth. And I want to say, please protect your energy also, energy-wise, okay? Please, use gold talismans, use Kai talismans from reputable sources, because it's not just the physical you need to protect, but also the psychic. And because the abuse was not just the physical, it was also psychic. And I know I'm like, even for Julian Assange, I said, yes, Vault 7 is all good, but to use it, we have to understand, well, how do they spy on people? It's not just these protocols, they also target individuals. We don't talk about MK Ultra, if we don't talk about Monarch, if about these programs, we basically have castrated our whistleblowing. Okay, and we must say this, because if you try to deal with things only on a material level, you don't understand how to help a person escape a cult. And for this, I refer you to Dee's testimony, for she grew up in a Mormon cult, very likely what Trump grew up in as well, because she met Trump and was allegedly raped by him, and I believe her. And I also believe that it can be the case that the perpetrator does also not remember, okay, because they are programmed to have a couple of personalities, and yes, before they were programming AI, they were programming people. When Elon Musk says AI is going to be disastrous, well, he develops AI, he knows what he's talking about because he's been in the programming before it was to people, okay? I suspect that he's breeder. But that is something to consider. So Sun Rahu, okay, it means that Trump, again, if we know, even before we know he's eclipse child, the Sun next to Rahu, yes, and the Moon next to Ketu, so we understand this is eclipse child, okay, when they conjoin Rahu, we have eclipse, right? So that tells me that is coming here to the earth fated, and it was fated to be, whether it is Mormon cult, whether it's Expandable Children. And please, for we hear with the testimonials, we hear about the people that were raped by. But you have to, and except for people like Lars that also managed to understand that their perpetrators were also going through satanic abuse themselves. We have to understand that the premise is that all of them were going through this. Okay, it's not about outing anyone, but I think it is important enough and is in favor of everyone involved for me to say that, and that includes Epstein. Again, listen to Anneke Lucas last interview on her own podcast. So this was fated. Was fated to do what he does, and that had to do with killing. Uranus also conjoins, and Uranus also conjoins Rahu with the Sun, and we know that this is the leader and the businessman, and his role in life was fated to have to do with revolution. And indeed, Trump does call for revolution, okay, for to go and climb the parliament. If I am not elected, it will be a bloodbath. All of these sayings, and he was very likely, but this is something interesting for eclipse children. Of course, eclipse children are pre-planned, but you never know when a child is going to be birthed, okay? And even when you plan or schedule for, let's say, C-section, yes, the eclipse notion is giving fated notion. So the child will come out when the child will come out, even when you schedule for a C-section. And so this is giving us a person or a figure that from within the system came to shake up the system, not to undertake from anything that he's done or doing. Yes, there are many ways in which a person can shake up the system, but definitely is a person that came to shake up our notion, whether of business, of leadership, or the political system. Okay, his Mercury in Cancer. He recently had a Mercury return in the 12th house with the moon actually with Ketu. So something with communication. We know that Trump is well known in talking to the people. Okay, right now in Netherlands, Geert Wilders is basically learning from Trump on how to speak to the people in the common people language. Okay, and he's making all of his party people talk to the people in the common, and he's not bragged, was proud. He said, I'm proud of all my party people that they speak to the people in the people's language. That is something that was very likely also his, but is also further learned from Donald Trump. And so while Mercury is in the language of his undoing, because he speaks to the language of the common person, it can be remediatory in terms of the support that he gets. So people laugh at Trump because he's speaking in simple language, simple, but in publicity. And when you want to get results, there is something called KISS, keep it stupid, keep it simple, stupid. And he is doing that par excellence. Okay, he's keeping it simple, stupid, and he's not stupid at all. He's not at all unintelligent or all the things that people say about him. None of that. Very educated. If you see him meet him with the British politicians, he is going to be all toxed up, and he's going to have the etiquette, and he's going to have the language, and he's going to have everything he needs. If you hear Trump talking here and Trump talking to the people, it's completely different Trump, but he's doing that to connect with the people, because if he speaks high language, the people will think he's snob, and with all his education and with all the things that he knows, then they would not connect with him. They could not create rapport with him. And so he does that not because he thinks the people are stupid, but because if he didn't do that, then people would think he is a snob, and he's not. Okay, he needs their support. He needs their genuine rapport to create connection. And we see that this could be something, wisdom that he learned from maybe the mother figure or even his own past life, where perhaps, and Jupiter in Libra is an air sign, but with Chiron. And we see we do catch him with this Jupiter Chiron, we do catch him with sometimes missing certain information, or simple information. I don't relate this to lack of intellectualism, but rather that because you grow in the cult, there are things you are exposed to and things you're not exposed to. Okay, if you would have to ask me what are, and I learned politics, yes, but you have to ask me what is every capital city in the world, I don't know to tell you. I don't remember, okay? Because Tom, Dick, and Harry grew up with their parents and they were playing Monopoly, or they were playing these games where they had, oh, the capital city of this, the capital city of this. I don't know to tell you this, but I do know to delineate the natal chart of Donald Trump. Okay, I learned something different. Okay, developed my intellectual capabilities in ways that are unusual. And in many ways, this is the case with Trump. So it's like the dumb blonde, okay? It's kind of like the dumb blonde case where we're supposed to believe we're supposed to believe that he's stupid, and indeed there are things that he doesn't know. It's like, oh, this is so basic, how come you don't know that? But in fact, what under the stupid blonde is exactly that a person that you wouldn't see coming, that knows how to finesse, how to get what needed to be gotten, and to tend to things that even if you are failing as business person, you have to understand that the failures in business are very orchestrated. Okay, you're not allowed to succeed. What we saw with X. Okay, when was Elon Musk allowed to rejuvenate X? And although it is making a lot of problems right now, just today, somebody at first he banned someone who exposed war crimes of Israel, banned, okay, like not allowed. And then he removed all the followers from someone, all the following and followers from another person. Okay, so you see this, and put 90% limitation on the reach of their account. So you understand that this is creating a lot of controversy, but he was only allowed to rejuvenate on the Uranus algo, which would, of course, coincide with this testimonial on him and Donald Trump, but that she was electrocuted and raped, and all of this together. And electricity has to do with Algol and Uranus. I will further talk about electricity. I'll make also my own testimonial, because my ex-therapist, that I would see that the way he would move from personality to personality, there would be like almost like he's going through electric shock. And I think the use of electric shock in these tortures is meant to create for various personality types and to program them, and using of the sexual energy and that. And again, nature tends to correct for itself. Okay. So people, it takes such amount of energy invested to program these people and keep them programmed that they already begin to understand how to program, and then when they want to escape, like Dee did, they already begin to understand how to neutralize, yes, the programming themselves. So back to kind of like the dumb blonde effect, we see that with this sort of Mercury in 12th house, in Cancer, emotional house, and Jupiter, although in Libra dignified, is with Chiron, that is giving us a wound to the worldview. So what are the similarities that I saw with Wilder's chart is that both of them have the 5th degree and the 17 and 18 degree on the Libra Aries axis. So what we saw basically happening, where we continue to see that, by the way, is if Wilders has his Jupiter an 18 degrees Aries and then his moon conjuncting it, then and has this Mercury in Libra and this Mars in Libra, so we are moving from the Donald Trump, and also Wilders is moving from being called the Dutch Donald Trump to his own identity. But when it comes to Trump, Rahu, that is ruled by Mars, is triggering, well, actually his 9th house, But where is his Mars? Okay, so he's having Keto on all these Libra aspects. He's changing his worldview, is changing, is even letting go of certain addictions that he had that have to do with women and the bedroom. My God, I did not see that one coming. Is opportune for Donald Trump to get, if he had some addictions were to do with sex or to do with his bedroom, okay, if what he does when, or even hidden enemies that are women, he's tending to that. And I think this testimonial in that effect, or what people are so afraid to happen, and the fact that she was testifying outside of the cult. I know people call the Imagination podcast, what is a control opposition and so on. I think that even if it is the case, she exposes so much information and in such dignified way that is useful for us to know, just as the case with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. So I still am very grateful for her activity, and she's very supportive, and she also helps survivors, as far as I understood. I don't know exactly in what, but that's a place if you are a targeted individual, or you are some public figure watching this and you're like, you want to get the fuck out of there, okay? Then perhaps, I don't know, yes, I'm not saying I vouch for, but perhaps that can be a place where you can contact other whistleblowers. And so we did this testimonial of basically being trafficked in the Mormon cult and raped and so on in these parties for both Elon Musk and Trump and for other names, is basically a testimony outside of the cult. And so I think in that essence, when the cult decides to expose you, so they expose some scandal, and then off with your head, okay? It was like, oh, you tortured, you snuffed, the person was raped and murdered by you, they were electrocuted, what else is, okay? Yes, and nobody knows that the second before that it was done to you. And then you were forced to do this, and then if you disagreed, you were tortured again, disagreed, tortured again, maybe 6, 7, 8, 19 personalities until there came an altar that would do that. Nobody knows. Okay, we think the Holocaust is what happened in 1939 to 1945. No, it's the Holocaust is what's happening all the time, and then every once in a while they spread it to the people. And so for this testimonial, it exposes of these inner things, yes, that are happening within those Mormons, within those secret societies, and in many ways can bring light and can shed light and can stop a certain behavior, and allow to have kind of like a power cut to and again, perhaps allowing, I don't know all the intricacies, but it's opportune time, the eclipses for Trump to let go of certain addictions that he had in regards to women and bad practices, which would, of course, return to him more sovereignty over his sexual energy and his ability to trust himself, that is needed just, as survivor. And for perpetrator, of course, naturally, if you can trust yourself, so trust yourself also not to do these things. But this is, again, I don't want to ideate here, when Neptune tends to ideate, is fated events. And I think that was why we saw this testimonial conjoining with Uranus on his midheaven, which is conjoining Algol, and is also ruled by this Venus in the 12th house. So all of these scandals coming from women that would have been his hidden enemies are now brought to light, okay? And brought to light together with understanding that he was very likely also victim of this torture. And yes, they are taught at this Mormon cult that women are slaves. Even in Netherlands, there was a lot of discussion about the boys that went through torture, but not so much about the girls. This is one of the criticism I heard regarding the Juris de Mink case. And so, yes, and so you understand that children up until the age of 12, this we know, they go through, when they go through abuses in similar rates, boys and girls. So there's no gender distinction there. And then the growing up or to think that women are slaves. Again, this is something that is meant to oppress the sperm, basically. Sperm count is basically limiting sperm counts, where they don't want to breed outside of their concoction. So they put this mindset in your head, because as I said in my yesterday video, you want to listen to that, we're not enemies. Okay, men, women, not enemies. People with penis, people with vagina, not enemies. We're not enemies. For to make us enemies, it takes a lot. Okay, there are the genuine human intricacies, like a bit jealousy, a bit this, a bit that, yes, but in essence, we are not enemies in the sense of people who would want to torture each other instead of like making love and orgasm together. Okay, that what is staying to do is making love and orgasm together. Okay, for not to torture, to this, to that, and a lot of energy invested, so to change what the person orgasms on, so that they would have to unlearn this, but they will also have to escape the cult, which is very challenging. We want to deal with that now, because this, yes, is expanding of what people say the plan to enslave humanity is basically, this is happening within the cult, and they just expand the cult to more people. Okay? This is why on Twitter, at the beginning, when it just became, before it became X, when Elon Musk just purchased it, all of us had Illuminati in our DM. And then we had the sex bots. And then we had the freedom of speech not reach. Okay, but then we had the blue V. Okay, and you see people that, very public figures, that their page is not reaching. Okay? As I was joking, yes, with myself, that even Geert Wilders is always thankful to X and so on and so forth. It's like, I think his cat's page is shadow banned. I followed his cat's page, it was never showing up in my feed, only in the beginning a little bit. That means the page is very likely freedom of speech not reach, but the Geert Wilders page is acting because it serves the cult. Okay, so back to these eclipses, definitely fated events already happened, and this testimonial was happening with Uranus on his midheaven. Also, the discussion on Taliban, I think, is very much perfected, is associated with his midheaven as well, because it's been a loud voice regarding Taliban. Okay, they have the same midheaven. Now, what can we further predict for Trump? So first of all, let's look at what I always look before anything. Okay, I looked at the eclipse cycle. His Mars is with the first house, so he's becoming an even more prominent figure. And is fated. Okay, through eclipses he's becoming, why? Because the ruler of Rao is conjoining the ascendant in Leo. But that puts him in more risk of lethality, which means he might become a bloody dictator. Why? Because if as expendable child he had to kill other children, so not to be killed himself, he had to win on all over the people who tried to kill him, basically. This is what he's destined to do as a leader and dictator, because otherwise he's off with his head. Okay? And this tells me that, okay, the fulfillment of the natal promise here is that this Mars that is now perfected is perfected for him to take on more of the public arena. And he says in the 11th house, a very public persona, ruler of the ascendant in the 11th, but it's also accentuated on the 22nd degree. Okay, it's like the more, with the Sun 22, it's kind of like the more famous you become, the more of these risks that you have around you. But again, you don't not grow into your Sun. And so what it means politically is that very likely he will be on the side of killing. And there are fated things. There's not too much room to play for him, because there are fated things. Okay, if for Wilders is not eclipse child, you could say maybe signed with blood, maybe this, maybe that. There are other things fated. For Trump, it's really like we have maybe the choice of how we respond to him, but I have to say I'm humbled for this chart. It's not like he has all that much choice of how he acts. And this is important to understand. He may not have choice for how he acts, but we have more choice for how we respond, yes, to his actions, and our response is fated event is in his chart as well. So there is a very tender thing here, okay, calling on Apollo again to dismantle tyranny, and this journey for Trump, okay, it's not without compassion that this is the life journey of the person. And so this will be further accentuated, and he's going to be key figure in 2030, like anybody with Rahu Ketu on 2030, like Richard Feynman, like me and Richard Feynman, like other figures that have their Rahu and Ketu on Gemini and Sag, which is associated with entertainment as well, okay? Worldview and entertainment and media and cities and technology and Rahu Ketu, okay, it's our journey. I have Rahu in Gemini as well, okay, degrees 13 degrees away from Trump. And I'm a pre-eclipse child, it's not as strong as eclipse child, but it's understanding that why am I talking about 2030 more than others? Because I have the nodes of the eclipses on that axis, and I know that us are going to play a role. It doesn't have to be public role, but we're definitely going to be playing a certain role in those world events. And so Trump is going to be having, just like myself, Rahu reversal on 2030. And so that would put more emphasis for him on his fourth house. No, for him, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. On his fifth house. Okay. For him on his fifth house. Yes, for me on the 10th house, where my Ketu is. Okay, so I'll have to reconnect with past wisdom. And he's bringing Ketu moon closer to my midheaven. But I also have Uranus. We have opposing Uranus. I have Uranus 12 degrees Sag. He has Uranus 17 degrees Gemini. So yes, thanks God I'm not like on the eclipse child, because otherwise we would be Stalin and Hitler. Like if I was public figure or leader, then we would be like Stalin, Hitler, because we have opposing Uranus. He's meant to rebel in a different way, an opposing way almost, than the way I'm meant to rebel. Just taking a note. And you can see that I'm indeed talking about D, but I'm talking about D. It's like, hey, you have this opportunity, but there are many things that I don't know about his life path, and he's going it with opposite direction of rebellion, which he's disdained to do. So that's why I was called to talk about Trump, because it's not just like, oh, my colleague talked about Trump, but my colleagues talk about many things. You saw, for me to talk about Trump was when the lot of fortune was on his 22 degrees sun, because that's I'm the person to do that now that Nikola Stojanovic is no longer with us. So now I want to talk about the transit. So he has Pluto. He has had Pluto going through his sixth house of enemies, of health, with the ruler in the 12th house. And again, this is AA chart. This is very correct rectification of birth time. So the houses here is correct. It's what I couldn't do for other charts, or even for Elon's chart. So sixth house Pluto, changes in the health, changes in enemies. And this is a place to call, I also want to do that in the future, Victor Astro Victor has a course on the 6th house, which is beyond fitness, health, enemies, and so on, because it's your daily routine, your service to the world, but also many other things. So we'll have this house perfected for next year, so I definitely will allocate some resources to study this course myself. You can go to Astro Victor. I'm not getting dividends from that now. I'm open to get in the future. And you can tell him you heard about it from me. So this is since 2008, there were a lot of issues to deal with, both enemies, but also his service to the world. Ruler in the 12th, Saturn with Venus, and with Moon ruled by Ketu. This has been a time where, although it was fated for Trump to be president and to go from, running business to doing what he's doing right now and towards his revolutionary role, and he knew he would be president when from decades ago, Ken was a very young man. Yes, he knew that. Because of this 29-degree ascendant, okay, I don't have the 29, so usually I would say things and then they would come true, but but it's not like I know that that's what's going to happen. I just don't understand my prophecies and then they come true. Okay, astrology helps me to look at things a little bit better, but he doesn't need astrology to tell him. Okay, with 29 ascendant, you already predict, and this is predicting him to be public figure in the revolution and so on. The many things that very likely he had to accept about himself and his path. Okay, it's like, okay, that thing is going to happen in my life. That thing is going to happen in my life. And so I also want you to understand that in the regard of the 2030s, that we the people, okay, when we talk about our freedoms, taking the power to our hands, taking the this, taking the that, our leaders, they don't have this. They have the power of accepting that this is their life, but it's not the same. Yes, it's not the same. And what they needed to accept, most of us haven't gone through. And I have gone through a lot, and still, I say, most of us haven't gone through, including me. And I have gone through a lot. I'm a whistleblower, mind you. Okay, me too, I began to talk about the cult, not knowing that the entire world is the cult. Okay? Yes? Okay? But still, these leaders, these people, these public figures, what they go through since childhood is Holocaust. Down and right. They're survivors of Holocaust walking among us. This is it. But it doesn't mean that anything else, they have to perpetuate Holocaust. Okay, so, and that creates a tremendous amount of omnipotence and helplessness, and this is where we get the omnipotent leader, or what people call the narcissist, or the that. It's that experience where everything is fated. It's like you are fated to have power, but you don't have a choice about this. So it's the helplessness conjoining the omnipotence and feeding in for the omnipotence. Okay, if you have a consultation group for eclipse children, we have an eclipse astrologer. I think both, I'm not going to name the name because he doesn't talk about it. Maren Altman mentioned that she's eclipse child. So perhaps maybe idea of consultation group for eclipse children would be appropriate. But yes, I'm a pre-eclipse. I have like 11 days. It's given more flexibility than it would, let's say, for Trump or for Maren Altman, or for people that really, and I had also a client that saw their lives 2 years ahead, and they couldn't do anything about things, just kept happening, and they couldn't do anything. And it was definitely something that you see and you understand that, hey, the world is very strange sometimes. And when these events are good, these events not so good. But the ability to be prophetic is not just about being an eclipse child. There are also certain things to do with the ability to be prophetic. So yes, Pluto through the 6th house, accentuated both his undoing the taxation, because it's ruled by Saturn, so anything taxation, and he's been so involved with taxes scandals, and we have, just like Jaguar Wright says, okay, people hate on Trump for things that maybe he's not even that wrong about, but they don't mention for the things that he did that we should mention, okay, like for me, it's like this testimonial that opens up another discussion when we want to abolish the practice of expandable children and denucleify the world. Otherwise, the world is going to be destroyed because there's so many people going through Holocaust all the time, and those people are not just starving children in Africa, also them, but are the best of the creme de la creme of the elite in Europe, in Brussels, Netherlands, USA, Norway, very likely also in Finland, Great Britain, and so on. Okay, so now Pluto is going to go through his 7th house. And I remember when Elon Musk posted about Trump wanting to go president again, and there was posting of the picture. It says, "Oh, would you like to see this this family in the White House again?" And my knee-jerk reaction was like, "Well, what didn't Melania say that she's going to leave him?" I didn't hear D-Day's testimonial then. And I was like, my schoolboy humor coming out. Was like, she didn't say she's gonna leave him and take the kids if he does that. But I was pinpointing that something's actually very serious, and I think Jag Wright also said something along that line. So I was like, Jag, this is so true though. But we both know that it's not so easy for Melania to leave, just like it's not easy for Beyonce to leave Jay-Z, because they are considered like slaves in the cult. Okay, it doesn't mean that she's not an independent, strong woman. Okay. It means that good morning reality check. Those things also happen to independent, strong people. And she's not to blame for this trafficking cult that she, very difficult to pave the path out of this, okay? And so Pluto in his 7th house, and I think I also addressed this a while ago when I looked at Trump's chart, is going to bring in power issues in relationships, where very likely Melania is going to want to, okay, the Saturn again is with conjunction to Venus in the 12th house. Remedial for his relationship is actually to be unconditionally serving for his partner, and very likely he would meet the same attitude because the Venus here is in the 12th house. So the most remedial things for him to do as a 7th houser that's ruled by Saturn, with Saturn in the 12th, is to basically be of service to his wife. But I don't know what allows, and again, he's eclipse child, but definitely we're going to see struggle for power in the relationship. There is going to be a transformation of the power relation within the marriage, but also amongst enemies. So he's going to have people that weren't his enemies becoming his enemies, and people that weren't partnering to him becoming partnering to him. Aquarius, by the way, also rules astrology. Okay? So with the fate of astrology in his life, and Uranus Rahu, he has a lot of fate from astrologers. He may be even fated to become astrologer. It's very likely he has also astrological knowledge, and that would be a great, I can say for myself, having Uranus in the 10th house, that has been very remedial for me to become astrologer and to get out of the astrology closet. And when people say, "Oh, but LGBTQ are murdered," darling, we are at the age of people like me can get murdered by church. And although it does move, I said it 2017, I said it 2024. Of course, I come out of the closet when I'm astrologer, and it's fated for me, and it's the only thing that balances me and puts me again in life risk, okay? And it had. So, but I also say that for him, doing astrology, very likely he's already doing astrology, but learning about astrology can be very centering, very remedial. and it's very likely fated to do that. Okay, so Uranus Sun, Rahu, radical self-acceptance, which very likely he practices already. But this is a good point in his chart, and it's going to be very remedial for his seventh house, because seventh house Aquarius means that astrology can play a role, science and astrology can play a role about the power relations that is shifting in the partnerships. So here you see an astrologer, me, talks about his 12th house and the testimonial of what it was, rape and electrocution, which is electricity, is both Algol, but it's also Uranus. And I talk about the scientific aspect of it to use for the sexual energy with electricity so that they can program people. But again, nature tends to correct for itself. And so, but also leading to radical acceptance of what happened to him and so on and so forth. That is the radical acceptance, detached radical acceptance of Uranus, that can be shocking, but is trining for his, okay, trine relation between his Uranus and his seventh house. A lot of power shifts, new enemies, change in the power relation, okay, and so that is 20 years. When it comes to Neptune, Neptune is about to leave his 8th house in a couple of years, which can be a blessing because 8th house is the house of loss, of debt, all these taxation issues, liquidity, liquid assets. Okay, we know that the business people are entrapped by the cult. When Trump was running for president, he said there is always the issue of wealth and politics. Okay, with money running the show. Now, because I'm the businessman, you know that I'm running the show when I'm politician because I'm the businessman. I am the money. But it's actually not true because all of them are endowed with trusts and endowed with the cult, and they have to do certain business moves that they have to do. They have to lose when they have to lose. They have to launder money when they have to launder money. And if not, you can publish a tape of them raping and electrocuting a woman on tape. Nobody will publish when that was happening to Trump. Okay? So that, of course, gives a tremendous surrender to the 8th house, to the liquid assets, to spying, him maybe being forced to spy, and people spying on him. Neptune is the theme of where you, but when you surrender these things, certain things come about. And it can be that Trump went through a lot of surrender before I recorded this video, because look at what's coming out and how it is coming out. Okay, there's something I talk about the deepest of things, but in a way where it's almost like miraculous healing, because I address things, okay, and I don't address him as like a monster perpetrator, but it's like, hey, there was also the part of when that happened, and also the eclipse issue, and so you can see how fatally remedial Uranus is in his chart. For him to go through that and through this exposure and in that way. So it tells me that for sure amongst the things that he did evil, there are also some things he maybe fatally did that was very benefic, okay? So have a very intricate character in here, for sure, with the way that these things, yes, come out, definitely. And I will post the synastry with Trump so you can see in what ways I'm biased when I'm presenting this chart, because that's relevant. Neptune would go to his 9th house where he would have to surrender a lot more. And again, surrender is not about loss and grief. It's about loss and grief. It's about longing. It's about miraculous healing as well. Can we talk again? But 2nd of July, Neptune is about to go retrograde in his 8th house still. So we're not done with the 8th house. We still have until 2026 for all of that course to take its course. And then we come to the 9th house, his worldview, international arena, but the ruler is also his own body and perhaps his own life. I mean, it is okay to say that. The person is approaching his Uranus opposition, which happens at 84, at 84. He has some time before that, yes. But it's also okay to say that we even when we are young, we have expiration date. And yes, and the ruler Mars here is malefic of sect, malefic out of sect. So Mars is more problematic for Trump. This means issues of inflammations can go to the heart. But with Neptune, there can be something viral. So he had to be cautious because there could be virus that's injected that's causing inflammation and neurotoxicity. But this is injected. This is. I don't see a lot of the 18 degree here, so I don't suspect this to be the cause of death or direct cause of death for him. But Neptune, he will have to surrender certain things with his own physical existence, life path, leadership. When is he winning? When is he losing? And again, I bring the example I brought of Kim Jong-un yesterday with all these eurekas I had recording, and this beautiful man was making sure that I'm okay, and I was afraid of what it wants from me. So it was recording in nature. And yes, for the example of Kim Jong-un, okay, Kim Jong-un was put to govern North Korea. And I say was put because this is what it is. Okay. Then there was very likely a spy that came into North Korea. Of course, he was arrested because everything is illegal in North Korea. And he got to be in forced labor. And then immediately Kim Jong-un tries to connect. He wants to speak only with Hillary Clinton. This is the Hillary Clinton emails, which I think WikiLeaks had to drop for Assange to be free. But this was, I got to read this before. I didn't screenshot, but I got to read this before. And Hillary was trying to speak with the Congress. According to what she says, the Congress will dry her up. And then until Kim Jong-un understood that Hillary is not so powerful in the United States, and he just wanted, very, very important for him was that he will stay as we acknowledge as the head of North Korea, and that North Korea will not be invaded, and to play the hymn of North Korea with him as the head of North Korea, and just to take this person who's 100% a spy. And I used it, I pressed it when Assange was in Belmarsh. I pressed on this so hard because I said, I want the names of all the citizens of United States that want to go back to United States, that United States will take them back before they try to call for Assange. And that was one of the things that prompted this idea, because Kim Jong-un was so eager to bring basically a spy back to the United States. He didn't want no troubles. I was afraid to be invaded. Now when Kim Jong-un sent troops from North Korea to aid Russia, I said it yesterday, I want to listen to that, because this is, North Korea will not be the same, and it's very likely that Kim Jong-un will not get to enjoy the changes to North Korea that maybe he himself even wanted. I remind you that all of these leaders are very likely from breeding abused, tortured, and torturing, and then put in these positions. And yes, this I say not to take from the honor and dignity of anybody, but for us to understand that this is the way, this is the structures that things are. Because when Pluto's clock strikes 12 and Pluto hits Aquarius, everybody wants to off with the heads of those we see, but the Tao that you can name is not the Tao. And I want us to get a step further, so we will not just recycle the Inquisition as we did last time Pluto was here, because we didn't tend to the Inquisition. We tended to the Jews, to the Masons, we tended to the kings, to the royal families. We got some supposed image of, okay, after 300 years of rebellion, separation from state and religion in France. But we didn't get to the Inquisition because we were too busy with off with the heads that we do see. And of course, if somebody oppresses you and people are murdered and tortured and have their organs removed, and you say, I want to off with this head. Yes, it's only human, but if we can at least attempt to understand what is going on, so that maybe we get the chances, all of us, with the people and the leaders and the business people, all of this, to get to the Tao that is the Tao and abolish Nuke the Inquisition from the core, so we can actually have free society. But you have to give up on certain tribalist thinking, because the elite is nothing but the Inuit. Okay? And for the practices, if we don't change from Inuit, which is what I said yesterday, that is sex being as a service, which is not compatible with sexual energy. You have to have a desire and individuality and sovereignty accommodated for in the sexual process. Okay, it's something very fascinating, even for me, to discover that it works that way. And it just doesn't work as the same as other things, or maybe it does, but we're exposed to that. And no child killing, child brides, all these things, okay? And that means that there are frictions in the satisfaction, because some people don't always get to meet their mate and so on. And this also is, yes, difficult and frustrating. And we do need to tend to that, but not so much on the account of will and consent, for otherwise we are basically causing high suicide rates, but now because everybody has to have sex with everybody. Okay, so it's a balancing of being able to change of how we see, so to see the soul of the person, not to be so judgmental whether it's a body or a character trait or something like that, so we can enjoy a good life with each other, but also, and to have children, have a childhood, and also for to have willing consent is not something that we can give up. And now Uranus on this midheaven with Algol is accentuating for just that. Algol is for the cults, it is Rosh HaSatan, the head of Satan. Okay? And I have a funny story about that for another episode. But she's basically just a woman that was very sensual, got raped, wasn't believed, and then got murdered. And her head was used as talisman. So she would turn anybody into stone with her rage. Why? Because her rage was just. And what is she protected from? Rape, murder, psychic attack. Not on the minima. Minima is fated, is eclipse. You don't do these talismans on the minima. But this is what you would turn to Algol. And she turns to it with electricity. So she has the mind, because it's the 5th lunar mention of tropical Taurus. It's to do with the mind. Luckiest of lucky. All problems solved. Al-Hakim, the smart, the wise person. Okay? That's astrology. But when Elon Musk was forced to change things with Uranus Algol, of course, the next thing we'll see is D-Day. The next thing we see is that the freedom of speech not reached got so bad that now he's been attacked for it. Of course. But he asked about Google, would you have a search engine X instead of Google? I said, well, take Google as it is with all the censorship and just put more freedom of free speech not reach on it. And D, I believe you. Okay, that was my comment for that. And to my surprise, these comments are viewed and shown and responded to, and that's why I commented, okay? Because with even my very limited reach, I had, when somebody gives you limited, when you see a count where you see not many comments, not many this, not many that, do not mistake to think this person not powerful. My Pluto square was understanding the places of where I'm powerful, but I didn't know, because I was always afraid of everybody's Pluto. But it's like take a peek at who's afraid of yours. So 0 degree Pluto retrograde Scorpio, mind you, okay? That's like 1,000 Pluto in 1 Pluto for the retrograde, and 0 degree Scorpio, which is, yes, I do not wish you to live in interesting times, my friend, but I am living in interesting times. And so are you if you're watching this. So we got the Neptune done, we got the Pluto done, we got the Uranus, we know what it's doing. And again, I think that I'm going to go, yes, we got the eclipses. Okay, we're going to have October eclipse on his Neptune, yet another fated leak, liquid assets, something to surrender. If he not surrenders, there could be another opportune time that would very likely approve upon his bedroom life, okay? To end certain addictions, to end certain patterns, to let go of certain hidden enemies or women enemies that perhaps were tortured by him, and can come to a certain closure. Maybe if you're watching this episode and you are one of these targeted individuals, then you can have a little bit of a certain closure was to understand of why this happened to me, what happened, what is going on there, and you have a bit more of an insider look thanks to the testimonials of Lars, of Dee, of Anneke Lucas, okay, that are bringing them all together and creating for a fuller picture, and that can remediate certain enmity or maybe some rest to your life and to your psyche of what happened, especially if you think that, oh, these big people are never exposed and so on, and justice never happens, so we can have that happening and not the washing image of it, but actually coming from a person who's not cult affiliated, okay, and it's not with the standardization of, okay, if I would go to astrology school, I would already be cult affiliated by design, and although my teachers, of course, are cult affiliated, very likely most of them, and my teachers are the people I listen to here on YouTube, just like you, then of course it's very likely, yes, but I have a more loose contact to this than some others, and I milk this every drop of this privilege both in favor of the people in the cult and the value that they've given for my life and for my freedoms, whether known or unknown, and for the people who are not in the cult or that escaped the cult, and to bridge these things so we can actually create a change and decultify for the world. But this means also tending to it from indigenous society, like from the Inuit and from the Inquisition. And we cannot talk about Jews or anti-Semitism without talking about how Jews are bred to do the dirty laundry for the Inquisition, okay? Because these Epsteins, they serve for the Inquisition, and then it's easy to say, well, you see so many Jews in this position, let's off with their head, just like you say, oh, we see so many Islamic people involved with crime, let's off with their head. But we have to understand how is this created, and like the Taliban being funded by the Inquisition, basically. And then WikiLeaks being funded by Rockefeller, which cuts dividends to the Inquisition, okay? And so you have the Taliban and WikiLeaks, and as much as you would like to expose, you're limited in what you can expose, and then you have to get vouched for by China, which I also talked about, okay, on X or Twitter. It's like, what was the most chilling part of going out, the fight to go out of Belmont? The part of it must have been to be vouched for by China. So that is scary. Okay, that is scary. But China was nothing but owning the means of production for the United States. Now, when Trump wants local produce in the United States, you see death in concentration camps for the homeless in America. American people, not immigrants, not illegal this, not illegal that. Okay, American people being in forced labor, because that's what it means, local produce. This is how it was produced in China. You want local produce. And if you don't do that, then the BRICS will take over and the dollar will sink. Okay, of course there is another solution. I talk about it all the time. But as far as Trump is concerned, there isn't. He's not meant to represent this solution. Or maybe he's meant to represent of what I can talk about and say, you see, if you're going to go the Trump way, this is what's going to be, because there's no other way. But if you understand that from the Inuit, we need to take away expandable children, so you wouldn't have these inbred Trumps to begin with, and if he would come incarnate to this earth, he would incarnate as a happy child that has a childhood and gets the time and gets to connect with people and gets to learn about the world and gets to do things that he's excited about. But then we have to tend to expendable children. Because when you have masses of children that want to die in the most torturous ways, this is how you manifest world wars, and this is very benefic to the Inquisition. Okay? If you do it as Inuit, as the indigenous, okay. If you do it as Abrahamic religion, okay, it still feeds the same egregore. Now, so I talked about this, I talked about that. I talked about the coming eclipse in October, which will include, yes, it will be with Lilith. And it will pinpoint on his Chiron. So I believe he's letting go. We're going to see a lot more of these testimonies. So very likely there were many other men and women. So again, if you're going to get excited about, oh, Beyonce is gay and so on and so forth, yeah, fine. Like they force them to have sex with everything, which means that they are both raped while being rapist. And the gay part is like, yeah, you're gonna like, okay, fine. If that's yellow for you and you want to talk about that, then yeah, we'll probably see that too. But I think the willing consent part is the most disturbing. Or the lack of willing consent part. That is the most disturbing. The people since childhood never got to have actual enjoyable, pleasurable sex that all people enjoy, and that requires and necessitates seeing each other as equal and being treated with respect. Okay, equal, I don't mean like everybody's exactly the same. When we talk about our rights, when we talk about our place in the world, our sense of importance to the world, and so on. That's a part of good sex. Even when you do power exchange or kink or stuff like that. So, upcoming October eclipse with Lilith on his Chiron. More of the above, more D-days, more exposures, more sex scandals. Will always have to do with money and taxation, because they are inbred for money. And they interfere with the root chakra and the sex chakra, so you will be greedy and you will think that this is your nature, because since a child, the more you try to get to know yourself, the more you see perpetration, the more you see that your only freedom is in killing others, the more you see all these things. Okay, what did I say to Assange when Assange was released? Okay, free man needs not oppress another. But big congrats on the release. Okay, which is important, because a free man is not oppress another, but when people are disconnected from their root, then they have a hunger for land, a hunger for this. Okay, they want to connect with the root, basically. But it's infiltrated, and so it looks like they're greedy. What helps people with psychosis that basically have been perpetrated and went through abuse and incest and all of the above? What happens is that housing first, independently of ability to work, in connection with nature, where they can step bare feet on the soil and being believed, helps them. But it doesn't work without housing first. It's not because of greed. It's because we are physical beings living on the physical land, and we need to connect with it in spirit and in matter. Why Algol is such a great wealth talisman. And again, if you don't have points or planets on Algol, go to other talismans for wealth, because it's a depth of understanding that is not easy to assess or to ingest. Okay, great wealth comes with this wisdom. Okay, and it's lifelong process. I met people with even Algol on benefic that I thought, oh, for this person, for sure Algol was on the minimum. And I say, no, she wasn't. She wasn't. They got scars all around the neck and the heart, and a shotgun to the head that they survived. In the ticks, okay, from who knows what. Challenges in language acquisition, Mercury. I said for sure Algol was on the minima. She wasn't. And I checked. I have the birthday. So again, if you just want to acquire wealth, Algol is taking a deeper road to that entails spirit and matter and wealth as, for example, Victor just talked about the asteroid Abundantia. And I checked to see if there's abundance. What is Abundantia for me? Well, she's conjuncting my sun. Sun is ruling of my 6th house, which is also pets. And again, my greatest wealth sometimes comes from having certain pets. It's not about money, okay? You spend money, but it is about, after the war, having a cat purring at your lap and you can relax your nervous system. Having these kittens rolling in your house, and no matter what mood you are at, they're so cute. However much they're pooping in exactly the wrong places to stain for them. You have to clean it every day. Okay? But they're so fucking cute. Venus opposing Pluto, what can I say? Pluto is crap. That's life. They never learn their place of pooping. You have to understand that wealth comes in many forms. And we have these kittens looking at you, and so they're changing up the mood. This is a lifesaver. From all your anxieties, from all your repetitive thoughts, from all your things, from all your that. And they're also remediatory toward the relationships of me and everybody else. It's true. So that's abundance as well. That's wealth as well. Uranus on Algol makes it more accessible for the native, for his placement, for his midheaven to understand that. And wealth as reputation, because this is midheaven, okay, the wealth is reputation. I think he more than others will come to understand that your reputation you have to surrender, especially with Venus, the ruler, being in the 12th house. And your reputation is like, it's not about being superhero, but about being authentic. And that is what makes for the reputation. Is that we see Donald Trump with all of the things, with the good, the bad, the horrid, the this, the that. This is genuine Donald Trump. Who, and ruler of the ascendant in 11th house in itself is very public, okay? There's a lot of what you see is what you get, which is a lot of his charm as leader, as business person, as public figure. For him, very good was to be public figure, but it also accentuated all the difficulties and the undoings, and there's literally almost nothing about his life, even very intimate life, that is not eventually brought up to light to be exposed, which is a difficult position. As I have ruler of the 12th associated with public places, one of them being Uranus, because I do modern rulers, and you cannot understand my chart. If the people looking into my chart a little bit, and you cannot understand my chart without understanding that my Uranus in the 10th rules the 12th. Okay? I can't do Bill Clinton. I mean, before Epstein, okay? I can't do Bill Clinton. I can't have secret affairs. Anybody, if people come to my astro, it's like, you're trying to have a secret affair with a whistleblower? Yeah, I can't do this. You see my energy. You know what energy I'm mixed with. You see what I speak. You know I'm going to leak. Okay? I can't do this. I cannot have secret anything. Can't do this. Yes? For him, it's coming from the ruler, it's been into the 12th, so that there was a secrecy, but it's even more difficult. If for me, very early down the road, I learned that it's not even a possibility to do anything. See, not that I like to, okay, I'm survivor of things to do with children, so I don't like secrets to begin with, but But it's like for very early on, it's like it's not for me. And the terrifying that people try to make something secret and people are powerful. And they're like, no, I cannot. No, it's the wrong chart. You fell on the wrong chart. It's going to get leaked. What the fuck are you doing? And so who's going to know? They're going to know. And so when if somebody tries to assault me, I'm more scared for what I will leak. An implication than when it's trying to assault me. Okay, I was like, this is so scary because I know I'm going to respond, I'm not going to leak. But here is the other way around, because the ruler of the 10th or in the 12th is kind of like you try to be famous, but it goes in a roundabout way, and your public life is hidden. You try to do something in the public arena, but then it ends up in a hotel or in a bedroom. Like, we talked about archetypes and so on, or the archetype of the dumb blonde, or the Marilyn Monroe archetype. And it's basically, it can be the life path of a person that is promised, oh, you're going to be famous, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. You just have to film this movie, you just have to film this, that, and it stays in the closet. So he had to act himself. He's fated to become famous, albeit that, but midheaven is like what you try to have your image on ends up being, dumped in a hotel room, dumped in the bedroom, and not actually discussion. So perhaps you can think that, okay, if anything I do is going to be like that, then I can do this, I can do that, and so on and so forth. Or it's the natural course of your life, and you do this and you do that, and then suddenly it does get exposed. It does get leaked. And so for him, it can be unexpected. If I could predict that everything I say, everything I do, I could predict of what, if I get limelight, what happens, okay, for what people would try to come up with, okay? But still, I could not. I have Neptune. It's another type of surrender. Somebody thinks I said something that I meant another thing, and for that, and I'm like, for that? All these things I prepared to answer, and for that? Okay, so that I didn't even do. So, life is a funny, Somebody is like mad at you because they think they have beef with you, and they're like, I didn't even mean that. So that's life. Now I want us to, we talked about the eclipse with Lilith. Pretty much anything there is to talk about, we talked about, I think. Yes. He's going to have a Venus return to his 12th house, conjuncting Saturn. So Lord have mercy. Now I'm going to take it to Synastry, but I need to log in. Because what the point of doing that is basically to show you in which ways I, the astrologer, am biased in presenting the data. Okay? So, and it's going to make my prediction a lot more accurate. Okay, fine. Now logged on successfully. Okay. Into my database. Donald Trump. And let's do a little synastry. First of all, we start with synastry. We see how do energies meet each other. Now, people, I want to say that. I said that, I think, about Wilders, but I don't think I recorded that. Composites. Just evergreen teaching for the astrologers among us. Composites, you look at them from day one. From day one, okay? I cannot understand the composite, the dynamic of when I was conducting certain figures in my life without understanding the composite. I just want to say, and here is a funny thing, okay? If you look at my synastry, at my composite with the chart of Wilders, Geert Wilders, You see a Chiron on the 22nd degree. Chiron, wound, 22nd, assassination. The very first thing that I said of what I said, because I came after the DeFries case, and it was before the election on June 6th, I said he was talking about a threat that he got, and I was like, yes, but the police wasn't taking the police, of course. And it's like the police was not working so well. Instead of saying July 6th, meaning that the DeFries assassination, I said June 6th, which would be the elections. Okay? If you don't get the composite, whereas Chiron on the 22 degree of assassination, you don't get that. And that was my opening line, by the way. Okay? So, because I was looking at the way assassination is done through the police, that they get these orders, and basically it's like a red carpet for the assassin to come in, and it's happening to people who escape domestic violence as much as it happens to leaders, and I wanted to do association remediation. That's why I was turning. But you see that what happened, and that is exactly how Chiron on the 22 plays. If you don't look at the composite, you don't get that, because the synastry wouldn't show you that. So look at composites. Composite is not just after people married, no. It is a part of synastry plus synastry, boom, composite. It's immediate. And now, let's take a look at this synastry. So what I like about AstroSeek is Peter from AstroSeek, that Peter. So first of all, compatibility of moons is, so he has, again, full moon, waxing, but full moon. I have first crescent. So this means that where I see a little bit, he can see the full picture. What it means that for me as an astrologer, when I deliver you information about this chart, because the moon is how we attract the information to Earth, also in magic, it means that I can only draw in the very beginning of the wholeness or the fullness of the chart. There's a lot more, even all that I said, there's a lot more to Donald Trump than what I said. Okay? It's not, I'm not seeing the full picture here, because I'm just growing. And he's already in a sign of very close to completion. So we're not seeing all of it. That's the first thing. Then squaring Marses, it means that my strategy and his strategy in life are in friction. But it also means when you have a duel, okay, if one person, let's say, would have a debate, it would be equal partners. Although only the Mars, not the other aspects. And so, but this also means that we can emasculate each other. So this means that the way that I view him is from a point of friction. My way in life and his way in life are different, and this of course affects my reading, because, for example, this means I'm not a so good astrologer for him, because even if I would say to him something that is right, because it's me that says that, or the way that I say that, or the way that I suggest is in conflict with his way, and so it would be difficult for him to process. Whereas somebody comes with a sextile or trine Mars, they would be better astrologer for him. Because they would, and it could be that I try to say this, that's because somebody says the exact same thing, and it's like, you're right, let's do it. I'm like, why were you arguing with me? But it can also be the other way around. If he would try to tell me something, let's say in business or something like that, I'm like, no. Then comes another person with a trine in Mars and say, well, how about we try this? And he's like, you know what, that's a great idea. And he's like, I've been saying that for a century. Okay? That's Mars meeting Mars. It's silly, but you have to radically accept it. So this is one friction, okay? Uranus opposing Uranus, but this also means my Uranus is opposing his Sun and Rahu. So this means I shake up his life path a little bit. It's not that I'm distracting his life path. It just means that there's something that I bring that is rebellion to his sense of shine and personality, which I'm not even aware of. Okay, so this means that I'm perhaps a conflictual astrologer. It's very fated reading, but it means that it's not easy to process reading, and very likely it would need other astrologers to say that with other Uranus generations, okay? Good Uranus generations for Leo would be the Uranus generations, for Gemini, sorry, would be the Uranus generations of Libra. Okay, the Uranus generations of Libra. Yes, I think, by the way, Assange and Elon Musk are Uranus Libra, which is very compatible for the Uranus. This is just one aspect. And the younger people, younger than me, at around the 20s, they would have Uranus in Aquarius, which is very compatible with the Uranus of Gemini. Okay, I have the exact opposite Uranus. So, but it would be more accessible for somebody, astrologer that has Uranus in Aquarius, which is way younger, or Uranus that were born in the 70s, then such astrologer could be very beneficial for him. So, and those are the people who are now around in their 50s. So astrologers that are in their 50s, they would have easier. So you would, if you listen to these episodes, you will have to have, that's another thing you have to come to terms with an astrologer, that they could be listening to this. I was like, oh, I didn't think that could be, but yes, you're an astrologer giving a reading. I tell this also to you young astrologers, because one of the 14 people may be Elon Musk. This person has had something similar to that. You have to take it into account. Okay, so always be courteous, be humble, and with all people are people. So Pluto Venus square. Okay, we're not dating. But hey, it does mean a crisis, because what did I talk about? Dee's testimonial, which is like the worst thing that could happen to him. It's like, I'm not even talking about the taxes, the sex scandals, that I have not here to the D-Day. And this is this Venus squares Pluto. Okay, I also have it with builders. And indeed, I brought up Lars more so than Ike, because Ike brought it once, and then it's like, I don't know what you want from Wilders. Then I look into his page, he didn't even tell me, and I see Lars' testimonial. So I was like, why don't we talk about that more? That is Venus square Pluto. Okay, it's bringing a crisis around values, relations, women, and so on. And Pluto Saturn square. Okay, so Pluto Saturn square is a Corvan out. Do we have an amiable? We have Uranus trining Pluto, which is good, because with the people like of the 63 generation, I have the Pluto. I have the Pluto square Uranus, which is like a world war. But here was bringing actually remediation to that. But then another Pluto square Saturn. This means that we. In composite, it means that we face each other with our greatest fears to transform a structure. I had this in academia with the person that was the Me Too crisis around, and all the 63 generation, the 73 generation, I have it with them in the composite. But in the synastry, Pluto is sextiling. And so here in the synastry, Pluto is squaring, and that means from this sense that structurally we tend to dredge up the worst fears of each other. So that means that, again, I might not be like, it would be benefic. It would be good to listen to that, because it's the fated reading, but it's important to listen also to other astrologers, and maybe have the intake of astrologers of like in their 50s or in their 20s on the same topics, and they would bring or come up with a more remedial information, but still not to forget to process the information here, because crisis events, they have their importance. Okay, like it breaks you down, but there's something here that needs to be shattered. It's just that it's good to remediate this shattering effect with something that is more harmonious. So, do we have amiable Moon to Uranus aspects in the synastry? We don't. Okay, has Moon in Sag, I have Moon in Cancer. My midheaven next to is Ketu. So it's basically for part of my legacy, something that also I've been in the past, but we have a Lilith synastry with Ketu. That I didn't see coming. Lilith Ketu, it means that in past life there was some issue of sexual boundary violation between us. And maybe that is why I'm exposing D-Day with a lot of compassion, but exposing that. So that can mean, and sexual boundary violation, okay, if we talk about expandable children, they're both tortured and forced to torture, regardless of their gender. So it means that there was very likely such thing. Anything more? Moon Mercury. Moon Mercury, it means that I may have ability to sense thoughts, although the way I see it is both people can read each other's minds. So this means that my thoughts could be transparent to him and his thoughts could be transparent to me. I did not experience this. I did not watch him like in speeches and heard his thoughts like happened to me with other people. And it's spontaneous. It's not like I try. But I think that this is what it means. But I remind you that to hear someone's thoughts does not mean you hear the context of someone's thoughts, especially if it happens to you with people. And it can be sometimes just funny information. Just as nice things that we say to ourselves and you hear them. So it's a nice rapport. It calls for a lot of transparency. I cannot think anything about Trump that he would not see. Very simple, and he cannot think anything about me that I would not hear. So that is an open line of communication, which I think if we were like two leaders, then that would be very benefic because we would have to be transparent with each other. Telepathic connections. Anything more I see here? We have Mercury square Saturn. So again, some crisis around communication. My Mercury, Saturn, Venus, and I think we all understand, okay, Mercury communication, Saturn, Venus is what we has in the 12th house, okay, the scandals with women in the bedroom. I expose it, but in a way that is crisis point. That's the synastry. Saturn is trining something here. Oh, my Pluto is trining his Sun and Rahu and Uranus. So we have a double whammy Uranus-Pluto trine, which actually means that as I'm going through my Pluto square Pluto, for him, there is actually, with all this crisis, there's actually something very radically accepting, transformative, alchemical to his life path. So I'm very benefic to his life path. It's a very wide orb, but it's very benefic to his life path. And we have a Saturn trine Mercury effect. That very likely means that if he would try to speak with me, he would speak more maturely, whereas I would be my communication would be more the problem. So although all the other people see him as a bully, for me, but the problem is that he would be the mature one, but I would need to govern my speech a little more, which with Aries Mercury is like not gonna happen. Mars trines Venus. Mars trines Venus, all people. Okay. Mars trines Venus is harmonious between the feminine and masculine. Okay, so and that means that and trine Saturn is actually an excellent aspect. Which is Mars is drive and Saturn is endurance. Mars, Venus, it could also mean that I could get along with, like, let's say whether it's D or Melania, because Venus is the spouse, that I could cooperate well with his spouses, and indeed I exposed what the D-Day and the things about Melania. Wow. But Mars square Mars, she's Neptune square Neptune in a very wide orb. I'm going through my own Neptune square Neptune. So and Jupiter square Jupiter, which is really annoying. It basically is the problem with Jupiter square Jupiter. We want to see each other happy and be happy for each other. That should be facilitated by remediatory aspects to Jupiter, okay? Like people who have, Pluto Virgo in the middle phase have Pluto trine my Jupiter, so they're actually transformed by me happy and are transforming for my happiness. Same with the Pluto meets Scorpios, but their Pluto is opposing my Sun. So that means that you can have other remediatory aspects that can allow you for to be happy when another person is happy. And this one is actually taken away from that. It's like what makes me happy, what makes you happy is in friction. Of course, if you electrocute people for your orgasms, yes. that can be a bit of a problem. Yes, so yes, imagine that with the remediatory aspect. It's not less difficult to process, it's the joy sometimes. Now let's go to the synastry, to the composite. So we saw, from the synastry, okay, the takeaways, there is a friction in the way I present. So for you, the listener, it might not be a problem. If you're not Donald Trump, I don't necessarily present him in a way that is malefic, okay? So it's not like I see, it's not like I miss things or not see things. The synastry is very okay, it's very correct, but rather it's just that I see the tip of the iceberg. Well, he's the whole iceberg, it's just the entire thing. So it's not what I say is wrong, it's just not the full picture, the spider moons. Now let's take a look at the synastry. Jupiter Mercury opposition. What the square here is coming from Saturn Uranus to Rahu, which is in Gemini, again 2030, okay? This composite is a lot about the 2030, the role of Trump in being and facilitating and the changes around 2030, and my response to it. So this is, and we have Saturn in the 18th degree, so Saturn is still with toxicity. Yes. Astrology here, which is signaled by Uranus, is in friction with this Rahu. Okay, it could be both in friction with the fact that, hey, what is this astrologer doing seeing all of this in my natal chart? What? Let's freedom of speech not reach them. But it can also be in the sense of where this is heading. Astrology is creating a crisis where I say, well, it is fated for Trump to be Trump, but I'm supposed to resist what he's doing. Okay, I'm the resistance. It's like, it's fated for him to be with. Okay, so all the things where it's like, it is your choice, you need to take accountability, you need to this, you need that, all of that gone out the window. I don't have this card with it because I'm an astrologer. I see that it's not true. I will have to use other cards. So that is also how it is taking place. Saturn, Rahu, toxicity, poisoning, all these things. And Pluto in a wide square to Rahu. Pluto square in the notes, very wide. But Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Pluto-Saturn conjunction is what I call the financial crisis relationships. Okay? I have it with my parent, by the way, it's also Pluto Sol. And this can create for experience of lack, but it challenges, transforms structures. So it transforms how you think about investment. When I think about me and my parent, before the 2008 crisis, so the interest was very high. And we figured that instead of renting a house, because we couldn't afford to buy one, instead of renting a house, why don't we travel but live on the interest rate, because then we don't pay the rent. And then for half a year we traveled and we said maybe we live here, maybe we live there. So this is how the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, especially with the vicinity of Uranus here, is about the age of my parents, could work in the sense that, like, hey, we could do something unusual with the interest Saturn rather than the same old. And then, of course, came the interest crisis. that was changing that, but this is creating for a certain transformation of the structure of long-term investment, of how you work with interest. And indeed, with Trump in my life, what I remembered him as a teenager is when he married one of his women, then he said the I love you sign here and here, and the prenuptial that was stuck in my brain because I thought prenuptial, I didn't see it as Trump, I see it from the other way around. It was like men are supposed to be equal to women, and so to have a prenuptial is like, okay, let's have our relationship about respect and about dignity and about connection and great sex and family, but not about a business transaction. Okay, there's more intricacy to that. I tend to that when I talk about like energies, but that's how I remember Trump. Okay, the courage to sign prenuptial, and he's one of the first people that did it publicly, to sign a prenuptial in marriage. It's not from the place that is the opposite place of where I'm coming, where he did that, because his wife were not as opulent as him, but and it's still inbred, and the marriages are mixed and yes, arranged and so on. But this is how I remember him. Okay, he transformed my view about contractual relationships to do with banking, investments, and so on. And for I learned that he was a businessman that inherited the wealth, and he lost more money than he earned. So when other people say, "Oh, he's a failed businessman," I understood that business is about failing more than you succeed. What I didn't understand was about the trust, that you have to fail and so on, all these things. That would Ronald Bernard fix for me. Fantastic. But this is, again, this is how this played a role. And of course, the many practices that he took as businessman affected my family in a way that, you know, my mother or my parents that are in his age cannot retire. But then if I take a look at him, he cannot retire as well. So you have to understand this about what we think is business, is that he can be dead any second for not doing what the cult says. And I think David Icke should be even more revealing when he talks about it. He just say, "Oh, this man, alternative media, you know, a cult and disrupt." It's like, no, come, talk about the things, talk about this, okay? Maybe in his podcast he talks more in length, but I think it's place to expand on this. So people can understand, but I guess he's playing with, you know, what Elon allows, what the cult allows for him to say on X. Okay, and that's why you would see him, you know, bullying right-wing leaders, but not actually talking about like bring in the Lars, and it's not just right-wing, right? It's also left. So yeah, Neptune on the 18 degrees, so many 18 degrees, you see that the vaccination, the World Health Organization, and I know that Trump was against the vaccine, but there are other toxins here involved. So this is a connection that has to do with toxins and elimination of toxins, because eventually Trump, all the right-wing leaders are just controlled opposition to the 2030 that is going to play out, whether they want it or not, whether they like it or not. And here it brings about like, hey, this is what it is. You are as WHO affiliated as the next person, okay? You're just as affiliated as Trump. To beat that, we would have to beat expendable children, which also I don't know how to do, and you're an eclipse child. So I really don't know what to say, okay? Maybe some magic, but we also know that magic is we can only do so well, and there are things that you still have to live through. So that is a different point of disposition. As per being biased, again, I'm not particularly biased in presenting his chart. Okay, here, what I don't see, Mercury is actually a trining Moon, trining Mars, in very wide orb, trining Pluto, which means that I'm a better communicator with this chart, okay, than let's say with Wilder's chart, where there's the squares all over the place. So we are only running the risk of me giving a too optimistic picture because I only see the tip of the iceberg, but I could also be given a too pessimistic picture. But it's not because I'm biased in seeing him, only but the fact that my moon gets only a fraction of what the entire persona is, which is only reasonable because we're human being. So this is actually a very good prediction. This is actually a very good reading as per Trump's chart. It doesn't see everything for the position of my motive. It's also very optimistic, leaves a lot of place to growth, but it's not particularly biased. Okay, it's not. I'm not disillusioned by him. I'm not completely like let down when I discovered that he was involved in so and so. It's not like I didn't see it coming. I'm not, yes, I'm not a hater, I'm not a lover, okay, in the sense like over ideation. It's just person to person, and I think has a lot of meaning and importance, especially when it comes to 2030. And for me, having to remember that he's an eclipse child, okay, that this what we have to work around this and what we don't have to work around this. What we don't have to work around this is to try and change his choices and his behavior. We only have to work around this is how do we respond. So that's Donald Trump's chart. I'm gonna watch my colleague's video. So I'm off to watch Dan Waite's video of Donald Trump, and see you in another day. Bye bye.